We are back on Morning Line. Thanks for joining us. Thomas Schwartz is with us. He's a political science professor at Vanderbilt University. It's always good to have him on, talking, as you see, politics, national politics, taking your calls. Got some lines open. Real quickly, before we get back to the phone calls, the one issue on foreign policy is we touched bases so far on, the tax plan and the sexual harassment and what's happening in Washington, D.C. along those lines. What about North Korea and the latest? What's your take on the president's fairly brief response when he was told about this latest launch of a missile?
Well, I think it was more reassuring than were he to sort of get into some sort of a war of words with North Korea. My own take is that he may believe that he has stronger assurances from China and from other powers in the region that he's going to get some action, that they are going to cut back. There have been reports of the Chinese restricting more trade, this sort of thing, and maybe they're saying to him, show patience, that you need to wait, that these sanctions are going to bite eventually and the North Koreans will pull back. But there is a sort of contest between the development of the missiles and the work of the sanctions, and right now it seems that the missiles are winning over the sanctions, so we'll have to see.
How does that work, too, in a big picture? And you see how sanctions and embargoes work, but you have North Korea. It's got probably some limited natural resources and the like. When you impose sanctions, the first people it really hurts are the populace, right? I mean, the poor, the everyday folks like you and me, not the leaders. Kim Jong-un's still going to get whatever the heck he wants. So how is it supposed to work when China and, of course, the U.S. and other allies have already blocked key things? How does it affect, how does it finally get him to change?
Well, the idea behind sanctions, and they've not always worked, is that you eventually do strike at the elite. You eventually get at the people around Kim Jong-un, the people who live in Pyongyang, the military leadership, the people who actually might have the power to do something about it. And you essentially make their lives worse. And as their lives grow worse, then they may be willing to put pressure in some manner on the supreme leader. This has not been very successful in some of the other cases. It has worked. It works better. You could make the case it works better in a more democratic state. As awful as South Africa was, for example, in the 1980s, it was still essentially, there was a democratic element for at least the white population who, when the sanctions hit, started saying we need to change. Otherwise, this is going to be terrible.
That's what got them to change.
A dictatorship as bizarre as North Korea, it may be very hard for sanctions to actually
I just wonder who near him has the guts to go up and say, look, there's not gas for me to fill up my car. I was at the grocery store today and there were no apples. I don't know if that's what we're talking about here. I know other things are restricted as well, oil and the like, but I mean,
who would have the courage?
He's still going to get what he wants,
right? And he's been ruthless. He's been ruthless in killing anyone who opposed him. So your courage has to be pretty considerable to voice any type of discontent.
Who do you imagine has any influence over him?
All I could say, the military leadership. Military leadership are the only ones really, because they are essentially the source of his power is the control of the military. There's not a civil society there. The military, it is in that sense, the military would call the shots, and if they would be the ones to promote any type of coup d'etat.
Right, so if there was a general, then
generals or any
folks,
figures there.
Okay, so it may just take time for more, but there are more further restrictions being put on. I guess I was reading where there was some additional ones, but I'm just, at this point, I'm thinking, I thought it's pretty much a net across North Korea. Nothing goes in or out except for some of China.
Well, that's and actually the other reports are that of course there's a fair amount of illegal smuggling along the Chinese border. The Chinese border is very extensive, and so there can be a lot of holes in it.
Did you see where there was I think it was a North Korean soldier that
raced across the demilitarized zone.
Raced across, and I guess, was he shot, but he made it and survived?
He was shot 6 times. I mean, he was very badly wounded.
But he survived, and he talked about the things he loves, and he had access to, what was it? I remember some American TV and music
programs,
and stuff like this that he talked about. So what's going to happen to him, you would imagine? I mean, he's now
he is recovering. They discovered that, in dealing with his injuries, that he had all these parasites and other sources of infection, which reveal how badly nourished a large portion of the North Korean population is. He'll recover, I think, and be in South Korea, but his escape was really quite exceptional. That is a very strictly policed border. The North Koreans evidently replaced all of the soldiers who were there once this happened and moved them away.
Moved them away, killed them?
Well, we don't know. We don't know. I mean, they could be that ruthless, and then we don't know.
It is surreal, North Korea, is it not?
Yeah.
I mean, holy cow. All right, let's take some more calls. Let's go to Sean. Hi, Sean.
Hi, how are you doing this morning,
Good.
Nick? I just want to say, yes, you have really just did a head-on with distractions, because Congress is supposed to be to the people, for the people, and I get it. I get that they're trying to clean house and get rid of the what you call mongrels that's doing these unsexual acts. Okay, fine, that's cool. Get rid of them. But the thing is, when it comes to that tax reform, honey, this is not for the people. This is not for the people, no kind of way. The old people, the young people, the people that's facing the future. I can say that President Trump is doing a good job in cleaning the house, and thank you for cleaning up moral mess. And God bless you, and thank you for letting me share.
Sure. I love it, Sean. Thank you. And let's get back to taxes, thanks to your call. What is your take on this? Because kind of what I'm hearing is that under this tax plan, if it passes, the sense I get is, yes, everyone will get some type of tax break, but it will benefit the rich the most, and it will result in a growth to our deficit. Okay, now the argument will be down the road, more money in the pockets of folks will stimulate things and actually bring in more taxes and fight that off, that trickle-down idea. But does that sound right to you? It's going to benefit everyone. I mean, even people who don't make a lot of money will see a little more money in their paycheck, but that it really does the most for the richest. Is that a fair characterization?
I think that's fair, and that shouldn't surprise us. It's even in our very unusual sometimes tax system, the rich do pay most of the taxes, so that any tax cut will probably give them more. This is really the playbook of the 1980s. This is the Reagan tax cut that was seen as so central to stimulating the economy of the 80s. It also produced, of course, enormous deficits, and the argument is that one of the things that's going on here is that by doing this, you will create deficits that will then lead to cuts in federal spending. So, in effect, the Republican idea behind this is that, okay, yes, even if it does lead to deficits, we can use the deficits in some ways then to reduce the size of government. And so I think, although deficits themselves are being protested by some in the party, and you see those ads against Corker on that, the other side of this is what also happened in the 80s, that you use the deficits as a way to try to restrict government spending on other things that you don't agree with.
I've got you. All right, and is there still talk of a possible government shutdown?
Yes.
I know.
Yeah. No.
That's still the deadline on that.
December 8th is the deadline, and both sides are playing a little bit of chicken on this. Trump did his meeting the other day with the empty chairs with Pelosi and Schumer, and you know what's going to happen is really unclear.
Explain what that means again, too, so folks. I know we've been there before. And we get close, and they find a way to pull it off. But basically, there has to be a spending measure signed by Congress and the president to allow for more
just basic government services to continue, and
meaning like paying for the folks that work at Social Security or the military or whatever, their paychecks.
I don't know that it's going to affect actually federal transfer payments. I think this would be more the case of shutting down, for example, federal parks, the sorts of
maybe
things.
The Smithsonian
the government,
for a weekend.
Smithsonian, museums, these sorts of things.
So and so the signature on this is they just have to re-up for that amount.
Yes.
And so where is the dispute sometimes? Why is that not just a given?
The Democrats want in any sort of deal, they want a commitment to deal with the dreamers. They want the Trump administration to do something about those people who were brought to this country when they were children and have grown up, and that Trump got rid of the executive protection of them, and they want something in the legislation that protects the dreamers.
So everything is just linked, isn't it? Sometimes.
Yeah.
Interesting. All right, listen, let's take a break on that note. Sheila, Cindy, Grady, others, we're going to get to your phone calls. Lines open. Your thoughts, too. Just sound off along with the two of us. We'll be back with more right after this.
This is a Storm 5 HD